lots of good stuff happening, teams working hard, and we're excited and happy with the progress. Any questions on that before I get into the FDP conditions? Great. So I'm going to refer to Barb's letter of July 20. She did a great job of delineating these 12 conditions that we all agreed to. And just really kind of a quick status update. So the first one is land dedication of 10% of the open space shall be recorded by plat or easement prior to boundary survey and prior to issuance of a building permit. That easement document, the revised easement document, which incorporates comments from Tracy Lawless at JVA and Barb, has been resubmitted as of this afternoon, along with the public access easements to VCamp, both the upper and lower. Those are also to the city. Item 3, the water system design shall be reviewed and approved by the city engineer prior to issuance of a building permit. So this one is a little bit of a trickier situation. While the water main lines have been submitted and reviewed and approved by the city, and all the plumbing plans are going through plan review process as part of the building permit application. The one thing that is not in front of the city yet in terms of final engineered plans is the wastewater treatment plant, which includes the water cistern and a water pump for the water supplied to the upper landing. I think as I mentioned before, the wastewater treatment plant is under the purview and jurisdiction of CDPHE, and our engineer has been working with Emily Wong at CDPHE right now, addressing the comments that were raised by the Clear Creek Watershed Authority and by JVA. We actually have a call tomorrow with the Clear Creek Watershed folks. I think it's going to be rescheduled for Thursday, though. We've got some conflicts tomorrow. But the challenge we have here with the wastewater treatment plant, so it affects both the water design and the wastewater system design, item 3 and 4 in Barb's letter. It's, they're just now starting engineering on this. We had to go through the site application process with CDPHE before we release the engineering. It's going to be 2 or 3 months before we have those drawings completed and approved by CDPHE. So what we would respectfully request here is the council's consideration on modifying the language relative to city approval of water system and wastewater treatment plant. I think, the slide that Barb presented at the public hearing when we had the FDP in front of this council, it says the wastewater system design shall be reviewed by the city engineer and the CDPHE. But the language in the final letter that came out July 20th says it'll be reviewed and approved by the city and CDPHE. And the reason we didn't want to have that approval language in there is because we knew at the time that CDPHE has jurisdiction on the wastewater treatment plant, as they still do. So that's just something that we would like to explore with the council, is having that language softened a bit so that just return to reviewed by the city engineer. But again, we're not going to have it. I should back up here. We're going to need building permits by mid-November. Barb, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out to City Council that staff had come up with, I think, 10 conditions for the FDP. When council considered it, we got to 12, and Brian is right. There was some reworking of the language that eventually went into the resolution. So what Brian is reading from is the actual resolution, which was resolution number 13. Andy and I have talked to Argo about this, and again, I think at least on the planning side, it's really impossible for them to get, Tracy has commented, but again, the final approval is coming from an agency that the city does not have any control over. So I just want to point that out.
Exactly. So I guess we can just pause there. I'll keep going through the rest of the items and we can come back and revisit those two at the end here. Number 5 is the stormwater and drainage plans and final drainage report for both the upper and lower development plans or areas shall be reviewed and approved by the city engineer prior to issuance. That's been submitted. Those have been submitted to Tracy, and I think he's pretty close to approving the same. So no issue there. Number 6, the Colorado Geologic Survey comments and review of the geologic report from ground engineering shall be addressed at the time of building permit. We did receive this week the response to CGS from ground engineering, and that has been sent along to CGS. No response from them yet, but that box has been checked in terms of submittal anyway. Number 7, the water
Right.
quality unit. Yes, Barb.
Just, so they sent something back, I think, to Tracy, myself, and Andy, and said that it wasn't on their schedule until October 14th. And what I said to them is, I said, the ship may have sailed by that time, and did not hear anything back from.
Well, I think, it's just going to be a function of how they respond to the ground submittal.
Correct.
October 14th on its own is okay, unless they redline the heck out of the document, and then that's going to take us time to resubmit, and then it could be getting tight at that point, Barb.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know.
No, and I appreciate you pushing them, and keep us posted if you do hear from them, please. Number 7, water quality unit utility separation concept require approval by the city engineer and CDPHE prior to issuance of a building permit. CDPHE, again, they're going to be reviewing our materials management plan, the final document. That could be approved in the timeframe we need. I think we're okay here. And the city has everything that they need relative to these 2 issues as well. Number 8, a surveyed plat-like plan set for the lower landing area of phase 1, as specified by the city attorney, shall be completed prior to issuance. The plat has been submitted. Comments were received from the city. We resubmitted that today, so it's back in the city's court. Number 9, annexation of the 4 upper parcels must be recorded prior to building permit on the upper landing. There's 2 outstanding issues relative to the annexation. One is just the actual annexation agreement. We discussed this last week, some language specific to the water rights at the upper landing. We're working on that language to get that document finalized. But the concern that we have relative to recording the annexation overall is the dang bankruptcy court. It's just that the Alpha claim is still tied up in the bankruptcy court. I talked to both John Miner and Dorothy Canese, the 2 parties in the bankruptcy. They're kind of pointing fingers at each other right now. We're going to try and reach out to the bankruptcy court to get the facts and try to intermediate here and help them negotiate this and get it done. But there's some risk here that the annexation will not be able to be recorded because of this bankruptcy. Now, and we could prepare an exhibit that shows you how little our project encroaches onto the Alpha. It's just a sliver of the corner of the Alpha claim that's held up in this bankruptcy. And it really go ahead, Mary Jane.
I want to clarify that the Alpha issue is not a bone of contention.
Right.
That the Alpha issue has been agreed to by everyone. It's just that it's connected with this other stuff that's messing the timeline up. So the Alpha claim is agreed to by everyone, but because it's tied to these other claims, it's taking longer.
That's
So
right.
Mary Jane, can you maybe since the annexation agreement is hanging out there, maybe Carmen and your Mike discuss a potential workaround on that?
Sure.
Because I appreciate how long you've tried to settle this. And then the other thing related to the annexation, can you not do your boundary survey adjustment with the county until this is resolved?
That's correct, Barb.
Okay.
We're doing it.
Now, one solution or workaround might be just a letter of authorization, both from Dorothy and John, that we have approval from the former landowner and the future landowner to do the work that we have proposed. That this is something that you might consider. But I think we can talk about that offline. Number 10, dedication of roads, gondola easement, utility easements as specified by the city attorney shall be included in the lower landing survey plans prior to issuance of a building permit. So the dedication of roads and utilities are included in the plat. The gondola easement is a separate document whereby the city will grant access for the gondola construction and operations to the Mighty Argo Cable Car Company. So that's into the city as well. Number 11, after 1 year of operation after phase one, the city of Argo shall equally contribute to a new traffic study not to exceed $5,000 to assess the transportation impacts. And this is relative to the right turn lane off of Colorado Boulevard. So that's 1 year after we open. And right now, the current schedule has us completing work in September of next year. So that would be September of 2022. So it's out there. And at number 12, this is duplicative, but it's a 30-foot wide gondola easement shall be included. And as I said, that has been submitted. So again, I think, we made a great progress on these 12 conditions. We've got a couple, nuanced items to discuss relative to the wastewater treatment plant, water supply system, and the annexation agreement. But other than that, we're in good shape. And that's all I've got for the moment.
Anybody have any general questions about the status?
So one question, so the wastewater plant for the Big Five right next door to you, has there been any discussion with them about what was going on, since it's run by the CDPHE also, right?
Well, it's a good question, Mike. So one of our strategies in the MMP to CDPHE is that should we encounter contaminated groundwater in the lower landing project, that we would pump that into the treatment plant. They've agreed to that in concept. They just require that we coordinate with them, of course. And then we'll be granting an access easement to CDPHE for that parking deck drive that also serves the back of house of the treatment plant.
Okay, thank you.
And what we keep, can I just, one thing we keep saying, Mike, is the upper and lower landing wastewater treatment are two totally different animals. I mean, upper landing has nothing to do with the lower landing.
Right.
Okay.
And Mike, just for your benefit, we have been spending quite a bit of time with John Curtis and John Bordoni and Tracy and Kevin Tone, just discussing water acquisition, and Andy, water acquisition. And just for the council's benefit, I should have mentioned this earlier. The city has agreed to allow us to purchase water from Central City. This does two things for us. One, it's a much more effective way to get the water to the site, driving it down the mountain from Central City versus driving up with a full tanker of water from Idaho Springs. So we're working on that consent language. I think, I sent the will serve letter, Andy, over yesterday or Friday. I can't remember, I lose track of the days these days, but it's in your hands now, the city's hands. And then also what we discussed is the disposal of any excess reclaimed water, as well as disposal of excess solid waste from our treatment plant up on top. And the city's agreed to allow us to take that to the Idaho Springs treatment facility. And that language there has to be an agreement put in place for that, and we'll begin working on that now. But the will serve letter gets us where we need to be to get back to CDPHE, because they need to make sure that we've got the ability to dispose of these wastes at a treatment plant nearby. So we're close on that as well.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Council, any questions? All right. Well, it's good to hear the update. I'm glad John Curtis is involved, with his expertise. It's fortunate that we have somebody on council that does have that long-standing background with water and wastewater and understands it much more than I do, or probably any other council member understands it. So it's good to have him involved in that. Barb?
Are you going to, I think one of the things that Argo is looking for, going back to the water system and the wastewater system, is could we revert to the language that says the water system design shall be reviewed by the city engineer prior to issuance of building permits, same for the wastewater. Since we need to somehow change that language, because CDPHE is actually the approving agency. So Tracy is looking at this and making comment, but he is not the final authority. So I don't know if you want to if you can take this up during the council session, or if we need to put it on the agenda for next week. But I think what they're asking is is to modify condition 3 and condition 4 of resolution number 13 that was passed on May 26th.
So
Because the intent was never to have city approval. It was always city review with
okay.
CDPHE approval.
You know, that's change, that's doing a change to a resolution. So yeah, it would have to formally go through council to make that change. So we wouldn't be able to do that tonight. It's not on the agenda. So we'll have to do, we'll have to get that prepared and make those changes and let Carmen review it real quick and then make a motion next regular meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay, I think that's what they need. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Barb. And thanks, Mike. All right, everybody, have a good evening. Good to see you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Yeah.
Argo. We'll see you later.
Bye.
All right, next on our work session agenda is our financial update and 2021 budget. Again, I introduced a little earlier Lorraine. She's been working with us on our audit. She made some recommendations and gave us some, head scratching thoughts on budget going into next year. And I'm going to kind of open it up to some of the highlights that we want to discuss, Lorraine. You're on mute still. You're still on mute, Lorraine. There you go.
So sorry. So sorry. First things first. I thank you. I enjoyed those budget hearings and I thought your staff members did a great job putting their budgets together and being very aware of the fact that and revenues are not coming in quite as had been expected due to the lockdown. I thought tonight that I would take you back rather than to their budget questions or their submissions, which I think are going to be reviewed with you at another time, that I'll just kind of set the stage for how to take a look at those based on your economic climate and what we know now at the end, having got the end of August financials and it being almost the end of September. So you'll have 3 of the quarters in the books within a week or 2. And Andy, is that what you had in mind for me to go over? So I'm going to try to share my screen with you and I hope you can see this PDF that is the financial statement. Is that visible to all of you?
Not seeing it yet.
I think you might have shared a different screen. Oh, there it goes.
There it goes. All right, got it. We can see it, Lorraine.
Okay. This is the similar one that I have spoken with you about in the past. So I'm hoping that it gets more familiar and doesn't seem too unwieldy. But there's a few things I want to keep pointing out, and I've highlighted those line items. These.
Right. It's Andy. Just as a reminder to everybody, if you want to, you are able to increase the size of the print on your screen. Am I right, John?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody, because the print initially comes in small, but you can, up at the top, you can make it larger. So thanks.
If you go up to the top, it says view options, click on that, and then it'll give a zoom ratio that you can increase the size of it. Unless Lorraine wants to increase the size on her end.
Can you go up to 100%, Lorraine?
Yes, I could do that.
That's a little better. Maybe 125. Let's see what 125 looks like. That's good. Thank you.
That's better, yeah. There you go.
I think we won't see it on some of the other pages if I go to 125. Let's try 115.
Okay.
Okay. This report shows all of the financial accounts for the whole city each month. And this first page shows all the combined cash accounts that you have. So I like that this prints first because it shows you have a very strong cash position. You've got several bank accounts that have combined cash, which means each of the various funds owns a portion of the money in these accounts. And those accounts total $7,345,000 at the end of August, which is certainly nothing to sneeze at. 453,000 of that is restricted for the rate stabilization on your bonds, but the rest is all eligible to be used for all of the obligations of the city based on what fund owns them. So that 6,892,000 is showing how much is being distributed to all the funds that own the money. And right below where it says cash allocation reconciliation, it shows you every fund that the city has and how much of that total is owned by each fund. So I highlighted the general fund because obviously that's your main operating fund. And you've got $1.6 million in cash at the end of August in that fund. The rest of the funds look pretty flush, except for the wastewater CIP fund, which I know you're aware of, and you're looking at some ways to enhance that and to get some reimbursements from some other sources besides these combined cash funds. I did highlight this first amount that's in the general fund, 1,631,000. And so when you go to the first page of that fund, that amount of the combined cash is always the first item on any fund's balance sheet. So here you're seeing the general fund owns 1,631,000 in combined cash. As other assets and liabilities, we're going to focus on the fund balance. This is always telling you what the fund balance was at the beginning of the year. So at the end of 2019, if nothing changes from the audit when it's complete, the fund balance, the general fund looks to have a fund balance of $2 million starting the year. So far this year, however, you've had a loss of $209,000, and that was it looks like that was planned, that you were going to spend down some of these monies. And it's always a budget question is, are you going to try to build up your fund balance or use it and spend it down? To build it up, you generally have to spend less and collect more taxes and revenues. To use it, you can hold off on the taxation and spend what you've already collected. Here's page 3, and this gets into the revenues. And if you recall, I've highlighted your 10 biggest revenues. And on this page, it's going to show you 2 years of actual information, where you are at this point in this year and what this year's actual is. So your property taxes for the whole year of 2018 was $146,000. It was $148,000 in 2019. This year, this time in this year, you've got $171,000. And I misspoke just now. It's not what you got for the whole year. It's what you had the same month, those 2 years. So you've gotten more at the end of August in 2020 than you had in either of the prior years. And you've collected 95% of the budget. The year is just 2/3 over at the end of August, and you've already collected pretty much all of your property taxes, which is normal because that's how property taxes are collected in February, April, and June primarily. The next item that's highlighted though is your largest general fund revenue, and it's not quite at the 67% mark that you'd like to see, 67% of the way through the year. And this definitely is reflective of the slowdown in the economy, but it certainly isn't a dire state. 62% as opposed to 67%, when you have a healthy fund balance, is something that you can definitely work with and you don't need to slam on the brakes. Use tax, which comes more or less from building materials, is a little slower. So people didn't build as much. It's only at 53%, but it's a smaller revenue. So the difference isn't as great as it would be if it were your larger revenue. Your franchise taxes, which is one of your top 10, right where it should be, right around 66, 67%. And surprisingly, building permits are more than what you budgeted. They're more than 2018, a little less than 2019, not as good as 2019, but holding their own, and more than what you budgeted of 63,000. So moving forward into your other taxes, these taxes here in this section come from other governments. They're shared with you. You don't have to go out and collect them yourselves. But there's obviously the marijuana special sales tax. It's at 58% rather than 67%, so it's a little behind. Road and bridge comes in quarterly, so it doesn't always flow evenly through each of the months, but you've already gotten everything you budgeted, so that's good. And highway users is down. That's one of the travelers, people staying home have put a damper on the highway user tax more than any of the other taxes that I see with you and my other clients. People stay home, they didn't drive, they didn't buy gasoline, and so that tax is down. Again, it's not one of your biggest taxes, but very biggest, but it is one of your top 10. So let's kind of zoom forward to the next page. Fines is one of your top 10, and you're in the 60% area. Your leases are one of your top 10, and you're at 47.3%. Down here for your total fund, you're right on target at 67%. You would want to be a little higher than that since, as I mentioned first, all your property taxes are already in. But again, you're not in dire straits and things seem to be improving. So good going. You've got a pretty diversified tax base for a smaller city. These next pages go through each department and what they've spent. And I'm not going to spend that much time, and your department heads will highlight what they're spending and what they're planning to spend. But I'm going to kind of jump to the bottom line for each department. So streets is only at 56.5%. So that's good when your expenditures are also slowed down as well when your revenues are. Administration, I think it's about on target. It doesn't have the types of big activities that streets does that it can kind of put off. It's at about 80%, but this fund pays some of your big bills like insurances that are paid at the beginning of the year. And so it is kind of a top heavy fund that gets more spent in the beginning of the year than at the end. A department, I shouldn't say fund. Community promotion is a little under budget, same with building inspector, and that makes sense since the building activity was down. Police, let's look at its bottom line, is at 62.3%. Court expenditures, 66, fire, 50. Looks like that's a transfer that probably happens a certain number of times a year. Parks at 41.3. So total expenditures are well below this 67% of the year that's elapsed. I mentioned that your revenues are less than expenditures by 209,000, and there's that figure that comes from these statements. And your budget was to draw down your fund balance by $1 million, $1,003,000 this year. So I don't see anything that's alarming at all about your current state of affairs. I think your department heads have done a really nice job keeping things in check based on what's been happening in the economy. So you're not in bad shape. We'll skip some of these other funds, but there is a similar type of information for each of the other funds. None of them has as much activity or as many pages as the general fund, but your cemetery operations, you know, are pretty low key. So there's nothing really monumental to speak about regarding that fund. The ramp fund, here you had a fund balance of $1,050,000 at the beginning of the year. You've only drawn it down about $54,000. So you still have good fund equity there of still very close to $1 million. Revenues are pretty much just investments, interest income at this point in time. You don't have anything else really budgeted for that fund. And your expenditures were to be 588,000. So you have a lot of capital that you could spend if you needed to. That's in this fund. I understand that that project's pretty well completed, and so looks like you're in good shape there. You had enough money. Here's your improvement fund. It had a fund balance at the beginning of the year of 3.2 million, and you've added to it by 204,000. So now you're at 3.4 million. Again, your taxes are the main funders of this fund, And they have come in around the same rates as they did in the general fund. You still have, it looks like you were expecting some grants that you have not gotten, but you haven't expended money on the other side without getting those grants either. So the improvement fund is in good shape. Your total expenditures are well below your budget. The lottery fund, conservation trust fund, has about 60 grand in it. And I believe you're saving this for some kind of major project in the future. You get paid quarterly some share of all the lottery proceeds and have no expenses budgeted. So you're just building up that fund balance for future parks project. Here's your 1% street sales tax. Again, very solid fund balance of 2.6, almost 2.7. But here you have been drawing down this a little bit faster rate. So you start at 2.6, you're now at $1.8 million. And your revenues are coming in a little slower than it hoped. You had thought you may be issuing bonds, and those revenues aren't seen here at this point in time. You did get your grant though, so that's right on schedule. You got 100% of the grant you were expecting. These expenditures, you've done quite a bit of engineering and asphalt curb and gutter work. You've paid an interest payment on your bonds, and you've got some reserves here in case you need them. And you've only spent 46.2%. So it looks like you're spending and using these revenues as you had planned based on being kind of prudent about the slowdown. Your water fund, its total equity shows more than your fund balances, your cash and receivables. It shows all of your plant and machinery and infrastructure as well. So that amount of money here of fund equity isn't all cash. Your cash in the water fund is just this first line item. You have some receivables that will come in cash. I hear you've got charges for services that are right on target with your user fees from their water utility bills. So that's really good. It's a little higher than the 67%, which is good since you just went through the summer. Total fund revenue is above what had been forecast. You did get some bond proceeds from the Water Resources and Power Development Authority. So the main theme here is I see your planned budget unfolding pretty well despite the circumstances. Expenditures are a little under this 2/3 of the year in both of those major categories. Your debt service is what it is. You've paid on time, and you essentially have increased your fund balance during your funds during the year. Your revenue have exceeded your expenditures by $771,000. Here's the wastewater fund, and it has a little more trouble, but it has some cash here, $700,000. It has fund equity of almost $6 million. Most of it's in the ground though, again. But your charges for services are very close to 2/3 of the year. So your revenues are holding steady, and your expenditures are under 2/3. So again, no problem. It's this operating part of your wastewater fund has this year-to-date actual of revenues over expenditures of over $250,000, almost $250,000. So when you get to the CIP part of the wastewater fund, that it's not looking as bright, but we'll hold on till we get there. This is the stormwater fund, small fund balance, which is adequate for its purposes. No real active revenues coming into this fund, and just a bit of expenditure activity, slightly under budget, 88% of the budget spent so far. So here's the water CIP. This one is not problematic. It has the 209,000 as a beginning fund balance. No real revenues coming in, but not too much in the way of projects being spent either. Here's the wastewater CIP. You could really combine your wastewater CIP fund with your wastewater fund, and that your auditors actually do combine them when they report your financial statements. Same with the water fund and water CIP. But it's useful to see about how you're financing these projects and kind of keeping them separate from operations, to see that these, you know, the expense of these projects and how hard it is to come up with that kind of capital to build major improvements, et cetera. So this fund has had a negative fund balance. It still does, but this is a key figure. The revenue over expenditures for the year has improved by 239,000. So it's chipping away at that fund balance negativity by improving it almost 10% through August. So now instead of minus 2.9, you're only minus 2.6. You did get this big loan in and some loan proceeds in the grants. And you've got these major projects that you're building with it, which will serve your community for a long time. Pension fund, you're just the holder of these monies that are contributed to the pension plan. They're not your revenues or your expenditures. They're just the assets of the pension plan, and it's, you know, pretty much run by someone else. So with that, you can see the gist of my conversation is you want to, of course, be mindful of the economic slowdown, see how it's impacted you, but see how your reaction has been adequate, if not great, to keep things on the up and up and to be able to have a down year like this and not be fretting about what's that going to do to the life of the town and to the services and you know, the needs that the services you provide and the needs of your constituents. I'd be happy to answer any questions or elaborate on anything that you might wish.
So council, we've had the department heads already go through a preliminary budget, pull some numbers together, and we over the night, and Andy will give us the scheduling for that we will be going over budget, I would say at least 3 more times before we have a final draft that we want to adopt. So we've got a lot of work to do. All the department heads did a really good job of pulling their budget together. Some could cut more than others, and we understand that. But I think the first crack at it was pretty impressive, and we got a lot of work to do. So this is always a fun time of year, getting into budget time and making sure that we connect our expenditures with our incomes. And it's going to be really interesting this year how we come out and set our budget and predict, if you will, what our economy is going to do over in 2021. Any questions for Lorraine, Council?
I know it's for Lorraine because I don't think she can answer them, but there's some line items that seem to be out of sorts compared to budget. And I don't know if this is the appropriate time to discuss them or not, but some things I don't understand that probably need some explanation to me, if not at a future date. So I have a better understanding of why they're out of whack.
Andy?
Next week, council will have a longer work session and we'll actually hear from each department on their budgets and their budget requests for 2021. And that would be the time that we can get into questions about line items and projects and that sort of thing. So we'll be digging in next week on that.
Okay, but mine's not about the future budget, it's about the current budget, so we can discuss it then?
Yes.
Okay,
And I would say that one of the things that happens with a budget, obviously you're making a plan, a year or 6 months before the actual events happen. And so you take your best approach to what you think the various line items are going to be and what they'll cost. It's almost impossible to exactly, plan correctly, but you want to make sure your bottom line is pretty good and you're not going over your total budget. We always encourage people to charge items to the most appropriate line item, even if that line item is almost spent, rather than trying to charge it somewhere else to keep them in line with what was budgeted. That way you really know what you're spending your money on and which line items need to be higher next year and which ones can be lower.
All right, any other questions, council?
Do we receive mail order tax on mail order items? I know other municipalities do.
Yes,
Where's that at?
in the sales tax.
Okay, so we do get it. Okay, good.
All right, council, again, we're gonna have a lot to work on over the next several weeks. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Lorraine, for coming in and walking through in a pretty impressive and fast way. I know that it'll go a lot slower once we have everybody's eyes on the budget. And without any other questions, let's take a 10-minute break before our regular meeting.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine.
Yeah, thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you, Mayor. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Lorraine.
good night, thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.
Excuse me,
Bless you.
thank you.
Video.
Okay. I think I'm gonna get some ice cream or something. Okay, so what?
You want me to go get you some?
Oh,
She was suggesting we have banana splits, like,
oh, what's the thought? I'm never against that. You had my cell, right? Or do I have my cell?
I think you had it.
All right, let's see. We're missing Bob. There's Jim. Hi, Nina. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. 7 o'clock, September 28th. This is our regular scheduled city council meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Michael Hillman,
Here.
Scott Pennell,
Here.
Carmen,
Here.
Bob Boland,
Here.
John Curtis,
Here.
Art Cacavelli, Jim Clark.
Here.
All right, please stand for the Pledge of the Allegiance. I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
Liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. I'd like to welcome anybody that is on our platform tonight on YouTube. Welcome. Sorry about this. All right, we have an agenda. I need a motion.
I would move to approve the agenda for the September 28th, 2020 meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second discussion. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Weren't we going to add a resolution? Andy?
Yes, thank you for catching that, Diane. We do have a resolution that was sent out this afternoon. It's for our Colorado Parks and Wildlife grant application. And we do need an official resolution from City Council to submit that application. It's very similar to the resolution we did for our CPW Trails grant request last year. We just changed that resolution and have it for your consideration this evening.
Was that sent out email? How was that resolution?
It was sent out by email early this afternoon.
Okay, I did not see that. Do we have a copy of it so we know what the resolution says and how we can make a motion?
And it's resolution number 24, by the way.
Does any of council have that resolution and has looked at it?
Yeah, I have it, Mike.
Anybody else looked at it?
I have not.
John, is that something you can share when council's ready for it? I think I copied you on that email.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So Mayor, Council, we can share that when you're ready.
Diane, what number was that?
24.
Thank you.
And weren't you
Okay.
going to add a letter of support, Mike?
The mayor's going to bring that up under his comments at the end of the meeting. Thanks, Diane, for catching
The
that.
letter of support.
This is for the county's grant
Recreation.
application for the recreation study. And that was sent out by email as well earlier today. And both of these are timely with a deadline of October 1st. That's why they were sent out in this manner. We got them after the packet deadline.
Okay. So we're going to add resolution 24 under resolutions, and then under mayor and council, we'll talk about the letter of support for the recreation study.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andy. Anything else? Okay, can I have roll call?
Michael Hillman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes,
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right, does anybody feel they have a conflict of interest tonight?
I do, Mayor, tonight on the bills for Allied.
Bills from, we know how to do that. We'll let Chuck take care of that for us. He usually makes the motion on that. Okay, thanks, Jim, for that. Okay, we have the
Thank you.
minutes. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from last meeting?
I'll move to approve the minutes from September 14th, 2020.
Do I have a second?
Second?
I second.
All right, discussion, council. Is there anything in the minutes that we need to clarify or change or? Everybody's good with it? Okay, can I have, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will move to the bills. Do I have a motion?
I would move to approve the bills except for Allied Towing to September 28th, 2020.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Discussion. Arthur, you have something for us?
I would like to say, for the first time since I've joined, I have no questions about the bills, and I would like to put that on the table. I was too busy.
Everybody raise your hands.
I was too busy looking at the budget, which I had questions for, but the bills, I'm all set. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Thanks, Art.
You're welcome.
Anybody else questions on the bills? John, did you have something? John Curtis?
No.
All right, can I have roll call, please?
Michael Hillman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, can I have a motion for allied bills?
I would move to approve Allied Towing bills to September 28th, 2020.
Do I have a second?
I
Second.
second.
Discussion. Roll call.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Art?
I did.
Michael Hillman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon, Bob Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
All right. John or Andy, or Diane, do we have any unscheduled public comment?
No, sir.
And no public comment. Community development, city attorney. All right. We're going to move down. John, if you'll share that resolution 24 with us. Okay.
That big enough to see there?
Yeah. Can somebody see that to make the motion?
I could read it as well if that'd be helpful.
Can you increase the size?
Yep. That might be a little too big. Hold on.
No, that all we need really is the top, so somebody can read the.
I can read it.
Okay, do I have a motion?
It's covered up with the screen. Hold on. I'll have it here.
Resolution
I'll
number
move to
24.
approve a resolution supporting the city's application for a Colorado Parks and Wildlife Land and Water Conservation LWCF grant to build the hiking and mountain biking trails in Virginia Canyon Mountain Park.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, that was resolution 24.
Yeah,
24.
It's 2020,
sorry,
right?
resolution number 24.
Thank you, Scott. Discussion. So and help me understand, John and Annie, this is a second round that we're gonna apply for. We were denied the first round a few months ago, and this is our second effort for this grant. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. There is 3 grants that would be useful for this purpose. There's the GOCO grant that we already applied for and were denied. There's this grant, which is a conservation grant through the federal government, which is a pretty good opportunity. It's a more non-competitive grant. And then there's a non-motorized trails grant from Colorado Parks and Wildlife to apply for. This land and water conservation grant is a good opportunity for us to build the majority of the mountain park. And we have this opportunity because we have more resources available to us to act as match for this project. We are intending to apply for this grant, the non-motorized trails grant, and we have a further opportunity to apply for the GOCO grant that we were denied the first round. Last week, we did speak to Colorado Parks and Wildlife about some of their concerns, which mainly involved the bighorn sheep population. We talked to them about some of the mitigation that we were planning to do, such as potential trail closures in extreme winter conditions and maybe during calving season. We also talked about making sure there's bear-proof trash cans and good education for people about the wildlife up there. And they seem to be more supportive of the project. And so this is an opportunity to get this application in still this year to fund that work.
And I believe, John, correct me if I'm wrong, you met with CPW because we were kind of scratching our heads about why we were denied. And we received some clarification of what we needed to include in this next grant application that'll make our scoring higher. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. We had addressed many of the issues, but the wildlife managers were just a little bit, wanted to make sure that everything was the way it needed to be to protect that population. Our bighorn sheep here are the most genetically diverse in the state and are critically important to manage the whole herd in the whole state area. And so they just wanted to make sure that we weren't precluding any of that with the trails that were built. We actually got rid of a couple of trails and reorganized a couple to make sure that we did that. And so it looks like we have a very good opportunity to get this funding through this round.
Okay. Jim, did you have a question?
I did. Is this the $250,000 grant? Is that the one, Mayor?
No, sir.
Or John?
We are applying for that one as well. That's what's called a non-motorized trails grant. And then we're going to apply for this one. It's the reason is that there are different pots of money. And so CPW may say, hey, we do want to fund you, but out of pot A or pot B. So this gives us the flexibility for them to award it however is the most convenient for them.
I understand. Okay.
Cool. We're showing 472 acres. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It does include some land that is very near the School of Mines property there on the west end there. So it crosses Virginia Canyon in an area. So the whole parcel is pretty large, but it's all managed by one Bureau of Land Management agreement we had when the property was transferred to the city. So that is all one parcel in the eyes of the state and the federal government.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any other
Thank you,
questions?
John.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, council? Can I have roll call, please?
Michael Hillman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
Jen Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Right. Good work. We will move down to our ordinance first readings. Do I have a motion?
I would move that we approve ordinance number 13, series 2020, an ordinance amending section 19-15, parentheses G of the Springs Municipal Code and table R 301.2, parentheses 1 of the 2018 International Residential Code concerning climatic and geographic design criteria. B, I'm sorry.
Do I have a second?
I was done with geographic design criteria.
Right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I see where we're going from 100 mile wind to 130.
Yeah, John, I agree. That's quite a jump.
That's
Yeah.
Per Dan Wester's request with Safe Belt.
That's going to be,
That's not standard in the code, or that's just,
I think it's standard for the 2018.
well, I knew 100 miles an hour was standard. I didn't know 130.
Right. And John, I was thinking like maybe Georgetown or particularly windy area, maybe St. Mary's or something. I didn't see Idaho Springs inordinately windy to 130. I thought that was steep.
well, when you set a code standard like that, it's usually based on statistics of like snow load of the area, wind requirements of the area. So I'm wondering if he got that from our, wind research of this area.
Yeah, and I think it's data plus. I think there's a percentage that you add on to that as well. You get the data of wind speeds, and then there's a percentage above that we add on to it.
You'll see in the chart also that the ground snow load was increased.
Yeah, to 60.
Yeah. I just wonder how much more burden it's going to put on contractors and bidding out stuff.
Well, and I think it's important that we don't overdo things if it's not necessary. It might ask for him for statistics to back up what he's doing.
Are you talking about Dan Wester?
Yes.
So as everybody should be familiar, this is an ordinance first reading.
Right.
This will have to come back to council. So we should, if we have any concerns or question, that's when we need to over the next month, pull those together and be ready to discuss those on ordinance second reading. Okay, any other questions? Roll call.
Michael Bowman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right, we'll move to B. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I'll move to approve ordinance number 14, series 2020, an ordinance amending section 9-35 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code concerning liquor license distance restrictions.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. So Art, I know you weren't at the meeting and you sent me an email before our meeting last week. And I think that all the council agreed that if we would have just done this for one business, it would have set a bad precedence for anybody else coming through. So what we decided that would be, and we kind of looked at the geographical area and who else could really apply for one of these licenses. So what we did, we thought it would be a better interest for us to do away with the distancing for in-house consumption. So we're going to leave the distances in for like a grocery store, a convenience store, or something like that. This restriction of the 500, 107, I don't know, if we go back 175, 500 feet, whatever it was.
Right.
We just took that out of our code. So if somebody has if the Underhill Museum wants to get a liquor license, they don't have to come back to us. There's about 7 businesses that close to 8, maybe 8 businesses close enough to Carlson Elementary that could apply and be okay. So that's why it's on the agenda, Art, with the removal of that distance.
So we took out the language too, as far as being restaurant, hotel type things.
So it's different licensing. What the Bee's Knees is applying for is a beer and wine license. So it's different than a hotel and restaurant license, and Diane will help me out on this. There's a certain percentage of food you have to sell
Right.
in a hotel and restaurant license. A wine and beer license like they're trying to acquire, basically all they have to do is have bag chips or something that you can purchase to snack on if you're having a drink. Diane, correct me on anything that I may have said wrong.
No, sir.
I think it's referred to as on-premise and off-premise, right, Diane?
Correct.
Okay, on-premise, off-premise.
And
So-
I'm glad it's clarified, because I was gonna have a real problem with off-premise. And I was afraid we were gonna have a lot of retail outlets that just like mom and pop gift stores. So this is on-premise, and I am for on-premise. I don't think there's anything wrong with the canvas and cocktails type of a business model. So I do agree with this being on-premise.
So having a liquor license, if it's on premise, they charge for whatever they're serving, a beer or a glass of wine, or
Sure.
they do it as a complimentary. While you're looking at my antiques, have a glass of wine,
They can do either.
Do it either, yes.
and the glass of wine, beer, whatever, has to stay in that store.
Right.
correct.
In the licensed premised area.
Okay, so now the way we have it set up that the restaurants and stores could have, for a few more weeks anyway, their services outside on the street, the way we have it blocked off, would they then be allowed to do the same thing?
The
So
bee's knees.
Pardon?
are
the
you talking
bees
about
knees.
this? yeah, are you talking about Bee's Knees or other?
Any, them or any store other than the prior liquor requirements?
So right now, our November 1st is the last day for us to have the street shut down.
Right,
We're gonna do our winter shutdown on November 1st.
right.
They will barely, let's see, 30 days, 60 days before they even have their license. So they won't.
Well,
even-
okay, but let's say next year we do the same thing, which I'm for right now, but I'm getting ahead of myself. They would be allowed to put tables outside and serve a glass of beer. or-
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as they modified their premises. Because
Okay.
right now they don't have or did they apply for an encroachment agreement, Diane?
They did
So
to
they've
sell hot
already,
dogs.
oh, that's right, that's right. So they've already got an encroachment agreement. So what they'll have to do is wait till they get their license. They have some modifications to do to their building. That was explained last meeting. And then in 2 months, about 60 days, they would be able, or anybody would be able to apply for a liquor license and no, as long as it's a stay in drinking situation, anybody would be able to apply for a liquor license without worrying.
You know, as I told you in my email, and I don't want to beat this to death, I was concerned about, to me, it was considered a threat when someone says my lawyer. Also with the training I had in corporate world, as soon as somebody says that, the conversation terminates at that point, no further discussion. And they can either go forward with their lawyer to talk to our lawyer and we would be out of it. So I applied that principle, which may not exist in our situation, but I got really offended and upset by that.
You know, it happened so fast normally, and council, some of the council that's been on here and Andy and has seen me do that to say, you know what? You said lawyer, that's the trigger that says end of
Yeah.
conversation, talk to your lawyer, to talk to a lawyer.
Yeah, I know, it
So
came
I
up rather
did not
quickly.
say that. Be honest with you, I did not. I don't know how she framed it, but like I said, there's been times, well, we'll just sue you. But normally 99 out of 100 times, I've always said, no more conversation. The attorneys will talk it out. And I'm sorry that I did not do that on that meeting.
Well, it came up the way kind of quickly, so I appreciate that. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Can I have roll call? Oh, and one other thing I'll say, this is again, first reading. Over the next month or so, if we want to jot down questions and ideas to ask on our second reading before it gets approved and goes into law. Can I have roll call, please?
Michael Hillman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes,
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right. We have one more ordinance 15. Do I have a motion?
I would move that we approve ordinance number 15, series 2020, an ordinance amending section 21-77 of chapter 21, land development regulations of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code concerning inclusionary housing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that Bob?
Yeah.
Okay, motion and second. Discussion.
I thought this was really well put together. I have to say, I felt very comfortable reading all of the different ways that we can be inclusive at 4% or 60%, and assurances regarding the rental or the ownership of housing for folks who are at about 60% of our adjusted means. So I spent some time reviewing it, and obviously, yeah, it was very well done.
Thank you.
So I had a little time because this is kind of a new program that I've heard about. Most of the programs in the past I've seen were government subsistence, like our low income housing project that we have at Riverbend, is it? And this is kind of a new program that I hadn't heard about. And I looked on the internet, there is an opinion out there, I think that Art brought up, that the lower income might be shouldered by middle income people because they raise the other units from losing it on the lower income unit. And I think Art made that point at the special meeting we had when we discussed all this. So
And
I'm
that-
not sure about the counts, maybe we could review the counts and see if we're comfortable with just 5 units or if this is something for bigger, because on a 5 unit, they have to put 1 unit. That's really not going to make a dent in our lower income. I think we need some bigger, subsidized projects like the one we have going on right now to make a real huge difference. I don't know how many of these housing projects we're going to have come along in the next few years.
So as I said in our last meeting, for us to start with inclusionary housing, and it's going to be a lot of number crunching. Couple of things. One, I would say that it's going to be very difficult to get the amount of units that we really need in this community by doing inclusionary housing. For instance, 100 units is 10 units. That just puts a dent in the pot, of what we really need. The other thing is we don't want to drive developers away by having something in there that they say, you know what, if we can only build 70 units and you're asking for 70, it's not equitable for us to be able to do that without driving just like Art said, driving the cost of the other units so high that it puts them out of reach for our community as well. So with that, I think that we ought to really and Nina, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Can we have another work session after we do an ordinance first reading and have a work session to discuss this further?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
As long as the second reading stays, obviously Andy or Diane can correct me if I'm wrong, but as long as the second reading, you have the date, you could pick a date now that's further out or a specific date, as long as that date is either met or on that day you continue it again, for the notice for the second reading public hearing portion.
Right.
Can we just table it till we have a work session?
Yes, you can do that too.
Well, then I think then you'll have to do a first reading again, but that's okay. Because you're calling, if you're calling for a second reading on a specific date, you either have to have the hearing that date and notice it and everything, or continue it on the date that it comes up on the calendar.
So we can go ahead and approve this tonight, but we can also make the changes on our second reading.
Correct.
So my recommendation is to go ahead and approve the first reading, set another work session for us to get together and really sit down and go through this again to make sure it's where we want. And then if there's changes that we'd like to and desire to make on second reading, we can do it that night.
I don't think there's any harm in that, because if you don't agree with it, you could still vote against it if you wanted to.
Deny it. Yeah, we could deny it on the second reading.
Correct.
And then we would have to work on it some more. So we're not locked in. That's the good thing about first ordinance reading, is it's not locking it in. It's not making it legislation, and we have time to make some changes and look at it a little closer and make sure this is where we want to go with this.
So
October.
So we can amend it between the first reading and the second reading. We can amend it.
Yes.
Okay.
Also in there, it mentioned that I like Scott, this is all new to me. In lieu of, we can negotiate, right? In lieu of the 15%. Am I reading that right? What's the formula for negotiating? How do you determine that how do you determine that the amount that you negotiate is equal or better than the 15%?
Nina?
Yeah, so do you mean the options or the fee? Because we still need to figure out the fee number. It would be a concrete number in the fee schedule. But if you mean any way to fulfill it, there's these 5 ways, and that's worked with staff. And so do you mean the financial end, or do you mean just any of the options?
The financial end.
Yeah, so I was going to say, that's the only thing that I kind of put a pin in. It needs to be very, very specific, and we probably should discuss it either at the work session or probably at the work session, and look at what other places do. It's a specific number that you calculate, and then it would be in the fee schedule. It wouldn't be, the number wouldn't be negotiable. You guys would set it, and then it would be
in the fee schedule. What's negotiable are these other options, providing housing off-site, dedicating land to a not-for-profit, paying a fee in lieu that will be in the fee schedule. And the reason why we did that is because it's easier to update your fee schedule probably throughout your code, whether it be any kind of fee. It's usually in a fee schedule versus the ordinance. Because the fee schedule is updated by resolution.
By resolution.
Versus an ordinance with 2 readings and amending a code and updating it on the site. So that's why it's like that. But we should talk about, to your point, we should talk about a specific number and kind of calculation. And so again, the options are negotiable, but the number will be set in the fee schedule, and it could be updated year to year, but the fee's not negotiable.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, council?
Mayor, do you want to include that on the October 5th work session?
Yes, please. All right.
The 5th is a Tuesday. Oh, no, it's a Monday. You're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, can I have roll call, please?
Michael Hillman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right. Okay, we don't have any ordinance second readings for tonight. So we'll move down to our city administrator. Andy?
Mayor and council, you have my report with 2 requests for action, please.
All right, do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the recommendation of the Historical Sites and Facility. I'm sorry, I'm reading from the wrong one. Yep, committee and staff to move the CO and the Colorado and Southern Coach 70 from City Hall to protective shelter at the Georgetown Loop Railroad in Silver Plume as soon as possible at a cost of approximately $1,000, and to place signage at the coach location at City Hall notifying the public that the coach has been temporarily relocated for emergency repairs and assessment, and enter into an agreement with the Georgetown Loop Railroad regarding the move of the coach repairs and assessment.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Discussion. So what happened is we did have Mark Grable and one of his or a couple of his wasn't at the meeting, their mechanics come out and take a look at it. Mark Grable, as John told us John Kane told us last week, that it is to the brink that if we don't get that thing inside right now, we're going to lose it. So I talked with Mayor Sam from Silver Plume. He's also the shop foreman at the Georgetown Loop. He's very excited about this. And what he was, and I haven't reached back out to him today, but he had a friend that he was going to talk to see if they would haul this thing up to Silver Plume for us. And all we would have to pay is the permits for them to do that. There wouldn't be any charge for gas. There wouldn't be any charge for doing it. His friend is a train lover, and we could get this done less than $1,000. That's my hope. But other than that, I think that John Kane and Andy were told about $1,000 to get it up there.
I think this is a small price to pay to preserve our history, and it's a no-brainer, I think. And we're so lucky to have that place up in Silver Plume, because I can't imagine what our costs would be if they were working with us.
Right. Scott, you're absolutely right.
I agree.
All right. Any other thoughts or comments? Roll call.
Michael Hillman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Let's move on to our second action item under the city administrator.
I'll move to approve an agreement for services with Colorado Mountain Bike Association for assistance with preparing a grant application to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife for construction of trails in Virginia Canyon Mountain Park.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second discussion. All right, roll call.
Michael Hillman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
Joe Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Right. Motion passes. City Clerk, Diane?
Mayor and council, I have my staff report for your review with no request for action.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Diane? Does anybody have any questions for Andy? All right, we'll move down to PD. Chief, what do you have for us?
Mayor and council, I'll refer you to my report.
Okay. Any questions for the chief?
It was nice to see there was only like one significant incident. I don't think we've ever had a report like that.
I'll be honest with you, I was sort of surprised. I mean, not if you look at our calls for service, they were high, but we didn't really have anything that I think constituted a significant incident. So it was a busy week or 2 weeks, but I can tell you, you'll see a number of them for the next council report.
All right, thanks, Chief. And this is where I'm going to, I kind of got railroaded by Councilman Harmon last week, but this is where we will announce for the letter of retirement for Chief Malanka in the city of Idaho Springs. I believe that date is March 1st.
Yep.
March 1st. So he's going to hang in here with us. Chief, thanks for all the hard work that you've done to bring this department to where it's at. And we're looking forward to working with you for the next 6 months to try to figure out who's going to replace you. So,
Well,
all right.
this has been the highlight of my career. I think it's a good place to move on to other things. Having we as a community, reaching so many, I think, accomplishments. So we still have, 5 months to talk, but it's really been a wonderful experience working for you and the previous council.
Thank you, Chief.
But it says effective March 1st, 2020. I assume that's an error.
Oh, is that a typo?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I have to do a do-over.
All right. I just want to make sure. I don't want you to walk out tonight and say goodbye.
And you just lost them. Now it's got to be April 1st. You just lost them up, Chief.
I thought that was supposed to be 2030.
There you go.
2030, yeah.
Hey, nice catch, Art.
That's a good catch. That's a good catch, Art.
I want you to stick around, so I'm making sure that we get this right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chief. Okay, John, Public Works and Streets and Water and Wastewater.
Mayor and council, I'll refer you to my staff report. I do have one request for action to build a trash enclosure at the townhomes at the east end on Riverside. This enclosure has been going on for quite some time. The contractor on the streets gave up trying to find somebody to build it. And these are the only 2 bids that I could finally secure. And this was an exchange basically for the easement to put the bike bridge on their property.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve $12,983 to Doug Smith and Company LLC for a dumpster enclosure from line number 20-00-5108.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion is second. Discussion. So what I will say is John Bordoni is right. We've been trying to find somebody to do this for almost a couple of years now. And this was a promise that we made with the townhomes at the east end of town, behind the Wildfire and Starbucks. And the dumpster location is the far west end, in between the Argo site and the condos at the east end. I'm sorry, at the west end of the condos, east end of the Argo. And this was something that we did to acquire some property and get an easement, like John said, to put in that pedestrian bridge during the Greenway project. A little more than I thought. This money was budgeted in the program, so we already knew we were gonna have to do this. And we're just ready to get it done so we can get a couple of the folks down there that says, hey, when's this gonna happen? We've waited long enough. And rightfully so, because bears have been getting into the dumpster. And people have been using it that aren't supposed to be using it. This will secure their dumpster. They'll be able to keep it locked and enclosed.
I assume the agreement is for them to maintain it once it's built then, or?
Correct. It will become their property once it's built, yes.
Any other questions?
Just to comment, I was amazed at the difference in the, not in the amount so much, but the level of detail that Doug provided on the construction. And I was really happy with that.
All right. Can I have roll call, please?
Michael Hillman,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Not sure when they're gonna start working on that, but hopefully before the snow starts flying. All right, any questions, other questions for John?
John, I have two, and they both have to do with the Idaho Springs Cemetery. We have a number of what we'll refer to as orphan grave sites, meaning there no family, taking care of them. And I honestly don't know what happens when we have an act of vandalism and somebody does something like knocks a headstone over. Can we, or do we as a town fix that?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
A lot of them, Chuck and Lou Howard have been doing, and
Yes.
also Jerry Miller, that used to own Clear Creek Supply, has done a lot of work up there also. And Dave Schusler does a lot of work. But we have, as a city crew, we've set up several of the tombstones in the past from the winter that people try and drive through there and knock over headstones. We've set them up. I do have a contractor that when he gets up here, will glue and try and repair some of the headstones also. We try and do that numerous times a year.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. The second thing is, and I'm going to apologize in advance if I'm wrong, but I thought it seemed like in the last year, maybe it's been a year and a half, but we had started some black steel fence, kind of taller fencing. And it only went a relatively short distance. And I thought I heard something about trying to match that up and maybe doing more of the steel fencing. Is that correct?
We have discussed that again with Lou Howard and the cemetery committee, and they felt that the fence is adequate where it's at.
Okay.
That they didn't want to try and enclose the whole cemetery with that. Due to the terrain, we were just going to stop it where it's at.
Okay. Yeah. One thing that it just brought it to mind is that I was looking, we've got about 100,000 in a cemetery account and close to 10,000 in another cemetery account. And I just thought that it seemed like a pretty healthy number. And I didn't know what we had earmarked in the future for the cemetery. That's why I had to ask you those two questions, but thank you.
And I don't know all of the details on those cemetery accounts. Diane may be able to speak to that, but I think that there's only certain ways that you can spend that money, the majority of that money.
On that Hanson Trust, you can't spend any of it.
Right.
Man, I ask, what good is a trust that you can't spend any money on?
No, I was going to ask Diane what.
Well, there
I
might be
don't- I guess-
restricted, right?
I don't understand. What is that? Were you saying the Hanson Trust?
The Hanson Trust. It's just the way it was set up, 100 years ago. Not really, but, and the way it was set up is you can't spend any of it.
Really?
We could make a resolution to move that to the Jim's Trust if you'd like, Diane.
No, you can't.
Oh, darn it.
Is it,
That's been discussed before.
can you spend the earnings of that account? Is
I
that the way
believe
it's set up?
so. I believe so.
You can spend the earnings that,
The interest.
I believe that's the way it's set up, yes.
That's a shame.
I've seen them set up like that before.
That's such
All right,
a small amount of money, though, that the interest is inconsequential.
In bucks.
Yeah.
Okay, buy a beer.
Okay, any other questions for John? All right. We will, I'm gonna come back to committee reports. I've got to get somebody appointed to the project support board. Who's gonna step up? It's Bob, maybe you can help out. It's once a month on Thursday, I believe, like at 8 o'clock in the morning.
I believe that's correct, unless there's a little, I haven't been able to attend. There is not an official position for a city representative on that board, I don't believe, but we traditionally have done that because, you know, they're in the city and so on. So that's the situation right now. And I know that Tracy had been on it before and was very involved. And I was wondering if you had talked to Tracy Stokes about that.
No, I haven't. I'm not sure.
I can approach her if you want on that.
Yeah. But I believe Troy is wanting some city representation on that board.
Oh, is it? Okay. I had not heard that. Okay. All right. So I can't comment on that. Although city representation could still be on the part of somebody that's not part of city council too, I would think.
Anybody going to volunteer? Nobody wants to volunteer. Okay, guys, I'm going to ask Tracy if she'll do it. If she won't, I'm going to do it. And then I'll send everybody a list of all the boards and committees that I'm on, because I'm on about 18 of them. So if I guess I'll add this to mine as well. So it's a little disheartening that I don't have any city council member that will step up and be on this committee. So I'll talk to Troy about trying to get somebody else like Tracy off the planning commission or something and see if that would work for him.
Currently, I work that particular day. Come the end of October, I may not be. I may just retire, I guess. I don't know what you want to call it. But if that comes about, I'd be glad to do it. I don't know at this point if that's a definite yet or not. But if so, I would be glad to do that. Or if you have some other I'd like to look at that maybe I could work around my job that I have. I hate to give up my job. I drive some nice vehicles and test drive some nice vehicles, and it's a lot of fun, but I may not do it for the winter. So. Okay.
Well, let me talk to Troy and I'll get back with you. Last order of business, the county is asking for a letter of support. You know how I have always done a letter of support. It's all together or no letter of support. And this is for recreation. I don't know if it's called a study. John Kane, you want to explain exactly what that is?
Yes, sir. So what they're trying to do is create essentially a management plan for outdoor recreation in the county. This is very similar to like what a comprehensive plan does or what the Virginia Canyon Mountain Park Plan accomplished. It just basically has a management, it creates goals for the management of outdoor recreation in Clear Creek County. There is a PowerPoint that they have created for this, and I can just walk you guys through it really quickly if you want. This is the PowerPoint. I'll just run through these slides very short. The outdoor management plan is just a community-informed outdoor recreation plan, bringing land managers together. So essentially what they're trying to do is make sure the uses of land in the county are sustainable and good for the community, and that we engage the community and center them in the process for how their uses are controlled. These are the things that they're thinking about are really important for their plan: engagement, ownership of all the different groups in the county. So that would include Idaho Springs for places like Virginia Canyon Mountain Park or the Clear Creek Greenway, and to make sure that land, we don't build like little silos of land in the county, that it's all kind of under a comprehensive idea. There has been some work for this in the past. They have built some working groups that kind of talked about goals that they want to do with this. This says they want to provide a high quality regional and connected open space, parks, trails, and recreation facility system that is treasured by residents and attracts recreation users. So kind of balance that residential use versus the tourism use that we know happen. And then to create strong partnerships amongst everybody here to build a better and more connected system. A lot of this deals with congestion at recreation facilities. You know, when people go mountain climbing or come to hike and bike and things like that, that puts a lot of pressure on I-70, and they're trying to just manage these uses. These are kind of the outcomes. This is a very general process that you use to create a plan. You create a vision, you find some actions that you think might fit that vision, you try to build partnerships, you try to fund the effort, and then you coordinate all the activities together. So they're just kind of walking through outcomes and processes here. These are kind of the groups that they're talking about creating to do this work. The first is a steering committee that would include land managers, which would include the city, about kind of like a high level of everything related to the TAM or to the land in the plan. There's a leadership group here that is bigger, includes the state, groups like COMBA, the Colorado Mountain Biking Association, which we work with on Virginia Canyon Mountain Park. The rafting groups, we know that river is the second most rafted river in the state. Different conservation groups like Trouts Unlimited, people like that. And then there'd be a community team level. That would be as many members of the community in Clear Creek County as we can get to participate. And then this bottom level here of county residents. So the thing to think about this is kind of pyramid. The bottom is residents. They form the base of everything about how decisions are made and what decisions are considered. And then as we go up, we just include different stakeholders that may be able to help create a plan. These are the priorities they've talked about so far, which again, just go back to the same concepts. Really good community engagement, make sure that land is managed as community or as citizens want it to be managed in Clear Creek County, as residents want it to be managed. It's inclusive, so there's no silos. Everybody has a voice and an opportunity to participate, and that it's data driven. We want this to be a quantitative process, not just guessing at the best ways to do things. We want to make sure that there's actually a good background for why we're doing things. This is kind of just, the last slides are just their process they're talking about. This first phase is pre-planning. It's kind of just talking to people, looking for money to do this kind of work. This kind of plan can be pretty expensive. They currently have $35,000. Looks like they're going after CPW and GOCO money. There is some available right now for this purpose. In my estimation, a plan like this probably costs at least $100,000 to do. It depends on the scope and what's required. So they're going to have to do some work to make sure that they can do that. A lot of that will be grant funded though. It looks like they have enough match to get going on that. That's typically enough, $35,000 for a $100,000 grant. And there may be other grants available too. And then once they do get a grant and they figure out the funding, the last step is to develop just a request for proposal, RFP, and then just to publish that and make sure they get qualified firms to work on that. There are a lot of outdoor recreational centered companies in Colorado that do this work, so that should be a benefit for us. Second stage is just identifying problems, identifying facts about recreation in Clear Creek County, finding issues and thinking about opportunities for goals of things you want to accomplish. Phase 2 is the analysis of that data. So that could include survey work, community forums like we do, things like that, all that community engagement piece to make sure that everything fits into, that we understand the community's vision and goal for recreation here in the future. Phase 3 is just coordinating and implementing the plan. So that's kind of where we would do brainstorming about how the best way to manage resources is. Should we start having people shuttle into Bierstadt or something like that? Should we consider how Loveland ski area works and how that traffic works? All that kind of stuff would go into this phase. This is also when we'd start looking for partnerships and funding opportunities for, like, if maybe there was new trail development or whatever the case may be. I don't really know exactly what the extent of all of this will be because it'll be a community process. But this will be where that plan is kind of fleshed out. This is just kind of the phase timeline for this project. Of course, this is all dependent on funding for them. They're submitting for the same CPW round that we are. They're submitting through a different program, but it has the same date. That decision comes next March. And then Q2 is when those funds are awarded. So in theory, this process won't really start until Q2 of next year. Although upon award, they can distribute this RFP. So I think these dates may be a little bit flexible just depending on what they're looking at CPW. I think that they may, depending on what they do, they may try to do something lower key or something with the money they have. I'm not 100% sure exactly what they're thinking. The GOCO grant, that is on October 15th. That's the resiliency grant. That is a grant that we're applying for as well. The decision will be really quick on this one. I think that'll be early November. And then the funds will be awarded around that same time frame. So that may be how they can kind of work in that RFP earlier if they do get that grant. The rest of it is likely to be concluded by 2022. So that is their presentation. Of course, I didn't make that presentation. I'm just giving it based on my kind of general understanding of their planning process. But if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or I can ask them of the county and report back as well.
John, who at the county is leading the charge on this?
Amy Saxton is the, I don't know what her new title is. She just recently got a new one, but she has been coordinating this work. But there has been pretty robust partnership up there in the different departments and with the sheriff's office. And I think that the stakeholder group will include a pretty wide sample group of county employees and of course city and different interest groups too.
Yeah, just a comment, it seems like with the pressure of use from Denver, the metro area, that it's probably time to do this, maybe past time.
We've seen, especially with COVID, that our areas are getting loved to death from unregulated use and shooting. I mean, shooting was a very big problem this summer with COVID, and I think people are just coming to use the wilderness as they see it, and they don't always see that there's a home, over there behind that tree. And so I think this is a way to start controlling for that kind of stuff.
Well, I don't think it could hurt to lend a letter of support. Mayor, or were you looking for a motion?
No, not a motion, just a consensus of council.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea.
Agreements to go ahead and provide a letter of support.
Yeah.
So if whoever is okay with it, raise your hand. I tell you what, let's do it easier. If you don't wanna provide the letter, raise your hand. All right, that's an easy way to look at it so I can see everybody. Okay, well, we will tell them, we will give them a letter of support for their CPW grant that they're going to be applying for the recreation study. All right, with that, anything else before we adjourn? Okay, it is 7:56. Thanks, everybody. Good meeting. Meeting adjourned.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night, everyone.
Good.
Right.
Night.